Hi, I'm Eric Mieni, and this is Breaking New Ground, a show that looks at housing and all that comes with it. More than 100 years ago, Johannesburg was a small but thriving town built on the gold that was discovered here in 1886. Today, it is the center of South Africa's economy, producing more than 15% of the country's wealth. This is quite significant. More than 3.5 million people live here, and if you ask them why, I'm sure most of them would say their parents or grandparents came here for the money. The fact is, people who work in Johannesburg earn a lot more money than they would if they worked in any other city or town in this country. Making big cities like this work and work well is a huge challenge. All these people need a place where they can work, live and play. And getting this done is no easy task, especially when the stream of people coming never seems to stop. Today, we look at why people are moving to the big cities in larger numbers. We'll try to understand how this move affects them, but more importantly, we'll look at how the move to the big city impacts on housing and people's housing needs. From its earliest beginnings as a mining town, the city of Johannesburg has always drawn those in search of opportunity. From poor farmers to traveling salesmen, people flocked to this city. By the early 1900s, Joburg was already a booming business center. Thousands of people came here from rural areas in search of work. Among these were future leaders like Nelson Mandela and Oliver Tambo. First-time visitors to this rapidly growing city, however, usually settled in the backyards of friends and family who were already living in the huge townships on the outskirts. More than 100 years later, the bright lights of the big cities still draw thousands of people every year in search of a better life. And it's happening faster than at any time in the history of the country.
It looks as if our rural economies all over the world are collapsing. Hardly anybody any longer supports themselves on what they can grow from their family farming. And that's driving quite an enormous dislocation of people off the land and toward the cities.
Urban towns and cities like Joburg have to cope with providing services for existing residents as well as the huge number of new people coming in every day. This places a huge strain on infrastructure like hospitals and clinics, roads and public transport. So even when they are continually building and developing, it often seems like it's not enough. For those seeking a new life in the city, the journey begins when they take the first step, even though the rewards are usually only enjoyed by their children.
The way a typical urban migration pattern would work in South Africa, it would be something where people are desperate to come into the cities. Now they will either have connections in the cities or they will not. And the real issue is whether or not people are able to come into, say, township housing as friends of the family. They have someone to stay with, they have someone to give them contacts, tell them where to go to look for work, where they can go to find housing and so forth. Once people have got a house, they can keep their kids in school, they can accumulate enough assets to be able to keep them from descending into poverty. So the whole government thrust toward delivering inexpensive housing to the poor on a free housing basis is that people are supposed to be able to do that. They're supposed to be able to come into town, get their house, be secure, start saving, keep the kids in school, and in the second generation they can move into the urban economy.
For Floraku Saleti, it was the promise of a better life for her son that took her from the beautiful farming community of Broederstroom in the Northwest Province to the harsh life of living in Alexander Township in Joburg in the 1980s.
Alexander mona ke dula teng ke fitlile ka 86 ne ho sentse gona le power ele ya strike yana se le sa black power so cause nna ke tla go diplaseng ne ke tshaba dilo tse di tshwana kana le tse cause aka di tloela mara yanong ke krelo ra ke tse bo re sentse ke etseng ene kana go king una na le 7 years ga fitla masola re le ka montlung ba tsere dithunya na le king ra tshaba so he re tshabile ene na krelo re bana ba bambaja mahobe rena re pala go ja le mahobe de when re tshuile ka teng cause dilo tse di tshwana le tse rena ne re sa di tsebe re kholetse go diplaseng ene a re fitla mo location ra kra bophelo ba teng bo tough.
Struggling on a domestic worker's salary, she spent most of her adult life living in a back room in Alexander.
Yeah, no, bophelo ba ko Alexander le wene se bole ka teng. ha bo right go hore o tsentse every time o phile o ipeshitse on and then all sa khone and then o ka se khone because life ya thing at all yona is not good.
Alex, as it is commonly known, has undergone many changes since Flora first moved there in 1986. Since 1994, the government has invested a lot of money in upgrading the area. Where once only hostels and shacks stood, today there are rows and rows of new houses, parks, courts and clinics. But Flora was nowhere near the top of a long housing waiting list, even though she had been waiting for over 10 years. It was only when her son graduated from university that things changed for her.
After I graduated from varsity, I managed to get myself a job at a production company as a DOP, director of photography, which enabled me to at least fulfill a dream, which is my mom's dream to have a house, which is also my dream to have a home. With that, I managed to buy a house.
Today, Flora is the proud owner of this beautiful house in Cosmo City, a government housing project.
Yeah, since I get to Cosmo City. Okay, if it's le mo Cosmo City ka May, ka di 3 tsa May. So, I guess so bone hantle re ho etsagalang cause heater ne re light mara re sa light so much. Gore mo nna ke krilo ka re ke go lefatseng le leng. So, since ke fitlile mo Cosmo City, ke bona gona le difference e kgolo cause mo ke leng teng hone yano. Le he pula ena a ke utlwi. Because every time mo Cosmo since ke fitlile ke phela ke le ko meberekong and nakonyana tsa bo late kona ke tla mo ntlung so ke na bana ba ke ba sile mo ntlo le bona ke utlwi ba mpotsa re ra bona eng ke kra everything ile right.
Cosmo City is a mixed income development, one of the many built by government across the country. Here, RDP houses stand alongside bigger houses like Flora's. The bigger houses are bought with a combination of government subsidies and bonds provided by the banks. After years of hardship, her decision to leave her home on the farm many years ago has finally paid off. Welcome back, and thanks for watching Breaking New Ground. Now that we've seen how a move to a big city can affect an individual, we've come here to the Johannesburg City Hall, one of the oldest buildings in the city, to see what that same move means to those who actually run the city, and especially those amongst them who provide housing. Welcome to the Imbizo section of the show, here inside the Johannesburg City Hall. With me on the panel this afternoon are Siana Nkhatle, who is with the South African Cities Network. Welcome. We are very delighted to have Meku Saletsi, whose story you just saw in the insert earlier, and her son, of course, King Saletsi. Welcome to the show, and you'll hear more about him later on. And we have Rory Gallagher, who heads up the Johannesburg Social Housing Company, JOSHCO for short. Now, to kick off, I just thought I should ask you, how does it feel being at Cosmo now?
Cosmo now. Actually, good the way I think you are excited. Maraki, Nadu Pilibo, no kin.
Yeah.
You need the young Ginadin because a long time and then Namo Pilo. And then
Yeah. Now, if things had gone the way you wanted, would you have ever left Prudestrom?
No, Ningas Quebeca to Hako Prudestrom if in Gebel or Kiplek alien right because Mara problem I think as Neredu Damo Plasia. I'm sorry, it's really good. Because I can't repeat as well. Or Mama Burung and Mama Burung. Wish or right house and a matao vereka. And in house close na matao vereka. Maburu abasa conori. Okadulamo. Why was so? Okay, Nakel Chituloko Priostrom ka 75. And then a key a go press. A kiss get to the parents at Sakamo. And then hey kids we are go breast ke kra lo okay mama ka ena since ale right mara papa ka okay a bereka and then u bereka straff cuz o tshwanetse a bereke.
No tlusa ke eng ko teng?
I'm sure ke bo teenager next ke le ke utlwa le nna no nka bereka and then ke nna le that feeling ya hore ke ba tlo bereka mo diplasing.
So no tsamaela philo e betere, to put it mild. No, you were moving for a better life.
Yes, right.
Yeah. Now, Siana, this is what they call urbanization, correct? Could you just break down what that is? What is urbanization exactly?
Well, urbanization, I think in a nutshell, a process of moving towards urban centers or places of opportunity. And there's a whole lot of processes and activities that happen towards the overall process of urbanization. It's a global phenomenon. I think studies recently have indicated that in 2008, for the first time, half of the world's population will be living in cities, implying that people have left the rural hinterlands to look for various opportunities, whichever way they define them.
So it's in a nutshell, it's when people leave the rural areas to go and live in towns or cities. So if I put it out, say that's urbanization, basically.
Precisely. In South Africa, we've seen an increasing trend as well, particularly so post the democratic dispensation.
Now, would you say that's created by a concentration of opportunities in urban centers?
Yes. Urban centers have been seen as places of opportunity. These opportunities being defined in a variety of ways. As we've just heard, I think most importantly is people who are looking for job opportunities, but other people move in search of a better life.
Better education and some other instances, I guess.
Yeah, most definitely.
Now, Rory, you work in a company that is 100% owned by the city. In a sense, you represent part of the solution that the city is trying to create for this kind of thing. But what I would like you to sort of talk about now is how this impacts on the city. What kind of challenges does having a migration of people into a city pose?
In Johannesburg's case, it's more acute than it is in any of the other cities in the country. Although in almost all of the metropolitan centers, the impact of inward migration, urbanization, as well as migration within the city is very acute. In Johannesburg's case, the two main causes for the need for new housing is new residents entering the city or entering the province of Gauteng from other provinces. But the second one is that we need to keep pace with the demand for new housing from existing families and new family formation when the next generation is ready to start their own family.
First, you've got people who can afford places, so you've got a housing shortage. What other problems are there or challenges are created by migration?
Well, the first problem is a problem of costs balancing with people's income. So a lot of new migrants to the city are entering the same way as most of us enter the city, into your first job. And for a lot of people, the first job is either a temporary job or it's a low-paid job. And in an environment where cost escalation has been quite acute, the first problem is cost. That is secondly, or results secondly, in where the person or where the family lives. For a lot of people who don't have a lot of income, the location of where they can find housing is at quite a long distance from where they can find work. That has massive transport implications. The third problem that then causes is that transport consumes a large portion of the person's income or of the family's income, so they have to cut costs on either schooling, education, clothing, or even food. The fourth one is that you then get, in a very dense environment, you get congestion. And in the case of Johannesburg, there's been a lot of emphasis put on a new upgraded rail infrastructure, road infrastructure, and public transport infrastructure. But the second part of it is that it also means that in places like Johannesburg, you need to find a way to densify your settlements. A lot of people, not especially, but also new migrants into the city, perhaps if the person has come from a place in the northern province, is quite accustomed to having a family home on a stand, a fenced stand, which is a separate home to the neighbor's home. Now in Johannesburg, that's costly because if we carry on developing in that way, the perimeter of the city just carries on expanding and expanding. And the fact is that a lot of the poorer inhabitants can't afford to live in a city which is very expensive. So the solution really is higher density accommodation. Sometimes that means apartment living. Sometimes that means an emphasis for people who can afford a monthly payment. It means rental accommodation, living in an apartment block, or living even in a unit on a smaller property. You know, gone are the days where a poor family in an urban area like Johannesburg would have a 500-meter stand, for example.
There are just too many people and too little land to share, if you like. We're going to take a short break. When we return, we'll be joined by Yondela Slimela in the panel. She is with the city's Department of Development Planning and Urban Management. So please stay tuned. Stay with us. When we come back, we'll show you how King found his own housing solution, living in the city center in a block of flats owned by the city. Thanks for staying tuned to Breaking New Ground. Now, before we carry on with our discussion, you'll remember that King bought his mother a house in Cosmo City, but he needed to stay closer to the city center.
I work in the television industry. I love it very much. I think it's the coolest job. I mean, I will never wake up dreaming of doing anything but what I do right now. And I've been taking pictures since way back. I remember when my son was born, I had this snapshot camera. So I took pictures everywhere I went. Right now I'm in the middle of doing a documentary. It's a Christian documentary about in God's name, which is beautiful. My workplace is in the city, so it's easy for me to go to and fro from work to my place without any hassle, because sometimes I have to put in like hectic hours at work. And also the city is very good because, I mean, it evokes those creative juices. Yeah, I came into Alex like runabout in 1986 during the state of emergency. I mean, the environment here was different. Although it was not perfect, although Alex was not well structured, but it had housing better than where I was coming from. From being a child to my teenagehood, I spent most of my life in this house. I mean, Alex became the only place I came to know in my childhood history before I passed my matric and was able to move out of this hood and go out into the big city. This is where I graduated in dramatic arts. It's like, what, 4 years ago? 4 or 5 years ago? The only problem I had here was accommodation. This was my home away from home. My bursary did not cover accommodation, so most of the time I had to make the drama school my home from home. Like I had to squat here most of my university life, you know? But it was a great thing because it just made me be able to get to class on time instead of having to travel from Alex in the morning on a taxi, which was just a mission. So I had to find myself some other means of accommodation. It turned out that there was development out here in Newtown, and that's where I stay right now. It's a rental property. It's not for buy, but it's perfect accommodation. I mean, the city is a very nice place to be in, but if you want to raise a family in it, there's still a little few development that needs to happen. For instance, you need like hospitals that are accessible, that are within reach. You need proper transportation. You need a place of playgrounds for kids, like parks and stuff like that. And right now, the city doesn't have things like that, you know?
Welcome back, and thanks for watching Breaking New Ground. Joining us in the panel, as I said earlier, is Yondela Slimela. Welcome to the show. Now, Brickfields is where King is staying, and what kind of solution is that?
Brickfields is a classic or typical response to housing demand in the inner city. So the densities in Brickfield are significantly higher than what you'll find in Cosmo. It's well located in close proximity to employment opportunities, but to public transport facilities as well. So it's a different type of response, looking at people who are comfortable with inner city living and the opportunities that presents.
I mean, the way I see it right now, where I stay, I'm loving it. I think it's very nice. I think it's good for me.
It's a good solution for a housing problem for you.
It's very close to where I work, so in a way, I save a lot of time. I cycle to work. It's convenient. It's nice for me to live in the city.
And maybe you could tell us what the solution map is that the city has in terms of housing needs.
Clearly, any attempt to find a solution has to be informed by a firm understanding of what the demands are and how those demands manifest themselves. So, for instance, in trying to find solutions and respond to housing demand, in particular in the cities, so clearly, in particular, when we're looking at housing for the poor, it has to be in close proximity to where people potentially will find employment, and that's a very important consideration.
Now, Yondela, Mamgusa Letsi has a house she really loves in Cosmo City. But what kind of solution is Cosmo City?
The idea behind Cosmo is that you put together so the two categories that Rory made reference to. And what that does, it enables the public sector to provide supporting services like schools and clinics at a higher level because you have a mix of income levels, for instance. So employment opportunities in that part of the city are increasing, which is a good thing, something important to take into account when you're looking at where people will stay in particular.
Mama, these people talk, these things they talk here. Are you happy with government?
Not really.
What are your problems with it? Okay. We miss still too much.
I lose patience.
I think that her views are valid. I think the criticism is quite valid. But I think the very real reasons for that, the demand is far bigger than the supply. And for as long as government is approaching this on its own, it's going to take that much longer to find solutions. So a solution like Cosmo, where the private sector and the public sector come together and respond to the problem, that certainly helps us as a collective find the solutions much quicker. So we need more kings who put in some of their money to the housing challenge.
We've come to the end of this edition of Breaking New Ground. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please join us again next week, Saturday at 8 a.m. when we look at how we can use housing to build stronger communities. Remember that you can write to us and share some of your stories or suggest topics you'd like us to discuss. You can also visit the Department of Housing's website at housing.gov.za.